we're on.
Yes. Evening, everybody. My name's Stephen. I kind of live towards the edge of Leeds, towards Castleford. And late last year, I was put in contact to someone who's living on a boat in a very desperate situation. I contacted him. Well, I've only got a few minutes to talk through this, so I contacted him, and eventually, a couple of weeks later, I met up with him. Because he kind of lived between Leeds and Manchester, and saw him a few times, supported him, helped him get his engine fixed and things like that. And literally one evening, a few days before he said he was leaving this area to go back to Manchester, I got this text message saying, "Don't bother to come round tonight, basically, because I'm going to have my last meal and pop myself." And so obviously I was concerned, I was worried. I phoned Carol, my upline, and told her the situation and said, I'm off to see him. He's only 10, 15 minutes away. And obviously she said, phone the police, which I was going to do. I phoned 101 for some advice. They took it as a 999 call and said they would get some police officers down there as soon as they possibly could. I gave them sort of a reasonable location, so I hadn't got there at that point. And I found his boat. He was sitting there. He just was kind of cooking, stroke eating, and he had a 5 litre canister of petrol next to him, next to a stove, but also he had a lighter. Um, then I just literally talked to him, and then the police phoned me to say, asked me where I was, and they eventually found me, and they kind of took over the negotiations, partly because I felt out of my depth. I was talking to him, trying to talk about things I knew about his life, but I didn't know much about his life, and it was good that these two police officers came down and kind of took over. I stayed around for the time. I did try to contact his pastor somewhere in the Manchester area, but I was unable to do that. It's trying to find someone he knew that had a relationship with him, and during that time, obviously the police had the paramedics coming, the ambulance service coming, other police officers coming, and the situation was then quite horrific, really, because during the conversations he got really kind of irate, didn't want the police around, and eventually he poured petrol over himself and got off the boat. And was he trying to ignite the lighter? I don't know, but he was definitely striking his lighter, and one of the young police officers took him down onto the floor, and the other then supported him and, you know, restrained him, and then walked him down to the ambulance. And then kind of I left that situation. That's roughly the brief story of what happened.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
I know you emailed me, messaged me, sort of after the fact and that. Can you say how long it took you to not recover? That's not the right phrase, but the effect it had on you, that encounter.
Yeah, well, before the police got there, he did say something about he was going to set fire to himself. I said, he got a bit angry with me because I said, well, actually, I've had to call the police because this is outside of my remit. And he said, well, why? What right? And I said, well, actually, I don't want to be watching you burn yourself. I said, if you was to do that would have a long-term trauma on my life. So I did talk to him about that. And I suppose it took a while to process it, like anything, isn't it? You think actually he was standing in front of three adults with petrol over him. He could have accidentally, even if he wasn't really trying to. I know it's difficult to ignite petrol, but he could have accidentally caught on fire. So yeah, it was a bit of a process, but fortunately, nothing too serious happened, and I recovered quite quickly. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Stephen, for
Yeah.
sharing that again and telling
Yeah.
that story. I've asked Stephen to write it up so that it's not, we're not ambulance chasing. We're not making hay out of this incident to make us look good or anything like that. But it's the story of what many of us come across. And I'm looking at your faces, and I know that some of you have dealt with very similar things. And I'm aware that some of you haven't and are just starting the chaplaincy journey. But that sort of idea of forewarned is forearmed, and it's good to know. And Dave, this is where you came in. So I wonder if you'd like to introduce yourself and maybe tell the same story, but from what you saw, and then fill in the blanks as to what happened immediately afterwards, or what your colleagues told you happened as well. And then lead us through the next half hour about how the Waterways chaplaincy and the police can best attend to this kind of situation together. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, Chris. Yeah, not a problem. So I think first of all, it's probably best if I tell you who I am and what my role is. So I'm Dave Peach, and I've worked for West Yorkshire Police now for quite a long time. And I've been one of their hostage negotiators, crisis negotiators for over 25 or approaching 25 years now. So my role within the police is to deal with people who are in crisis, and that is similar to what we had here. A gent that was not feeling great and such like, and his mind was a bit muddled up and he didn't really know what it was doing. So I deal with this all the time. And then obviously the other side of that is dealing with some serious crime issues with kidnaps and things like that when I work to get the hostage back, both locally within West Yorkshire, regionally and internationally. So lots of experience as a negotiator. So the first thing to consider this one is that I didn't go there immediately. The first response to this, after Steve had phoned me through, was our district officers who would be working in that area, and they're the people that drive the panda cars around and will deal with all of the 999 calls and things like that. So it's come through 999, and the officers have responded to that. They've gone down there to the canal side, where they've come across the boat, the individual in crisis, and the engagement has started at that point. But because of the threat and risk that was involved with it at that time, because obviously it's life-threatening, the sort of the information we've got is life-threatening. This gent could die as a result of his actions. So they asked for the crisis negotiators to attend, and then that's where I came into and attended at the scene, maybe some 30 minutes after the initial police officers got there. The negotiations took place. We weren't really getting a lot from this lad, to the point where he was obviously threatening to set himself on fire, having doused himself in petrol. And then a decision was made that we couldn't allow him to do that. He'd got his lighter, and we put in an intervention at that point, which is always risky. Not just for him, but for the officers that are involved in it as well. But the intervention went in, he was arrested or detained, and then was obviously taken down to the crisis centre to be reviewed, I suppose is the best way to describe it, by the mental health team. Now, obviously, what they decide with him at that point is no longer a policing issue, it's a health position. So we don't always get to know what's happened. We've done our bit, we've kind of saved his life, hopefully, and then we pass him on to people that are better trained than we are to deal with that mental health side of things. So he went to the hospital, and that is really the last we saw him. I do know what happened to him. He obviously had some treatment and some support. That support was still in place and in his ongoing, even though he's now moved away from the Leeds area. And that really is as much as I can tell you about it. Not because I'm being difficult, but he's obviously subject to data protection, and his health records are his records, not mine. So I can't really give any more on that. It wouldn't be fair on the individual, and more importantly, it'd be illegal. So that's where we are with that. But subsequent to that, obviously Chris made contact with me and just asked if there was anything that I could do or share with you guys who are doing this fabulous work, engaging with the boat owners and such like on the canals and the rivers. And I said, yeah, I could come along, do a bit of a Teams meeting where I could give you some tips on what to do if you're dealing with these people, because it's my bread and butter. I do this regular, in fact, too regular, in fact. So what I did was I just put a little bit of a presentation together, and I'm going to skip through some of it because I know we've only got an hour, and I don't want things to drag on too much. So I did identify some learning objectives for you in true policing fashion. So we'll have a little look at the prevalence of suicide nationally, and you might be surprised how many people do take their own lives within the UK. We'll have a little chat about the common cause of suicide, including risk factors and some warning signs for suicide. And these will be great because these are things that you might pick up on when you're engaging with people on the side of the water. And I'll give you some tips on how to recognise and how to engage with these individuals who are feeling suicidal, including how to talk to them about suicide. There's lots of misconceptions around suicide and people kind of dodge it. But actually, if somebody's not feeling well and we're thinking they're looking to take their own life, we need to talk to them about the reality of taking their own life. It's no good talking about rugby league or rugby union or what the favourite football team is. Let's talk about what is the crux of this matter. So we'll kind of go through that. So that's not the boat. That is a different boat with another gent who was in crisis the year before that I dealt with. But this is why we do what we do. The government had this paper that came out a few years ago now about building community safety that helps prevent suicide because there's too much of them. And obviously, as it says there, we're a blue light service, the police. So we have to, or we are trying to improving the competence and confidence of frontline workers to deal with suicidal crisis. Well, that is the blue light services. But I know you're not blue light services, but you bring so much to these people that I don't want to clash with blue light people, but you are talking with them, so you are kind of frontline workers. So you're going to have a great part to play when you are engaging with these communities who are living on boats and barges and such like. So that's why we do it. There's a government strategy all around it, and we'll just park that there. Nationally, these figures are from 2021. They don't get released that often, and the government have had lots of other things on their mind at the moment, so these figures have not been released for a little while. But in that year 21, there were 7,062 suicides recorded in the UK, and that was an increase on those from 2020. My issue with suicides is quite simply that they only rarely get recorded as suicides, especially with children, if they've left a suicide note. Otherwise, the coroner might return a verdict of death through misadventure, and it doesn't get recorded as suicide. So there's probably a whole host of other numbers that are being hidden away within other areas, if you like. But what's interesting around these suicidal figures is that they are increasing, and they've now got to this point where the government are really looking at it and putting pressure on local authorities to have plans for suicides and the health services and things like that. The overall suicide rate, 10.5 per 100,000. So we might think, well, that's not a massive number, 10.5, but let me tell you, it'd be very different if it was one of your loved ones that was part of that 10.5. You wouldn't be thinking it's not such a big issue. The male suicide rate is significantly higher than the female rate. So, you know, from figures 35% male versus 25% female. And that is all because you ladies out there, when you're not feeling great, you are open to conversation with friends and you'll talk about your feelings, whereas men struggle to do that. And then they will bottle things up until it gets to a point where it's too much for them, and then you know, find themselves in these really difficult positions where often it's difficult to recover from or get out of. And the deaths with males is normally more violent than a female death. So they are the people who, women not feeling great, they're the ones that will probably go to bed in the evening with a drink, a number of tablets, wash it down, and then they just don't wake up in the morning. Men are going to be more violent, so they're the ones that will jump off bridges, behave like this individual that you saw, Stephen, on the boat, where he's prepared to set himself on fire and such like. So they do present a real issue for anybody who's trying to deal with them at that time. And that is the age group where we find the highest suicide rates, male between 50 and 54. And there's all sorts of reasons for that, and lots of work has been done around that, and things like going through the middle life crisis. The kids have left school and gone to university or whatever, perhaps moved on with their own lives, and then men find out that they don't really care for the wife much more, and start to do things that obviously have that impact, and then things don't go well for them, and then they end up in this downward spiral within their own sort of mental health. And then, well, I've already covered that, male suicide is likely to be more violent than the female suicide. So quite a lot of people do die. And what I would say is, if we're getting 7,062 people that have actually died through suicide, you can bet your bottom dollar that there will be thousands more that have thought about it. They may have been spoken to by somebody who has helped them with that, or got some family support, or even maybe from the health service. But there will be hundreds of thousands of other people that will have considered this at some point during the year, just haven't quite got to that point where they've taken their own life. So it is very prevalent. So what is suicide? Suicide, sometimes people get confused around what is suicide. Well, it's dead simple. It is the act of intentionally taking your own life. Thousands of people in the UK are affected by suicide each year, whether they do it or whether they think about it. And these suicidal thoughts are common, and many people of different ages and backgrounds will experience them. There is no barrier to it. It doesn't matter what your upbringing is. If you are experiencing a bad time, then suicide might be something that you think about, even if it is only a fleeting consideration before something more positive comes into your life, which changes your mind. But it happens all the time with many, many different people. But the big thing around this is knowing that somebody cares enough to listen and help could be the difference between life and death. And this is where your work will come with people on the Waterways. It's not always talking to people. Sometimes it is just listening to them and letting them tell you what they're experiencing at that time, and to know that they're being taken seriously. Suicidal thoughts, you might also hear that's called suicidal ideation. And this is just experience these intrusive thought through your head of ending your life, feeling that others will be better off without you, which is never the case, but they genuinely sometimes will die through suicide because they think their death will make life so much easier for other people that might be looking after them or being bound to them by some form. And they will think about methods of suicide. So normally you have got to have the intent to do it, the capability to do it, and then the equipment to do it, because suicide is not an easy thing to do in my mind. So it has to be planned. And it might be that they just buy the tablets and the whiskey or whatever it is they're going to drink it with, or they might go out and get petrol, they might go out and find ammunition for a gun, or get sharp knives, whatever it might be. But they've got to have the means to be able to do it. And that might be they take themselves away and kind of go missing whilst they're thinking about this. And it's this fleeting consideration of fatal self-harm that we've already touched on, and having this clear plan to end your own life. So I don't think people wake up on a morning and just decide that they're going to end their life. I think that there's been a build up to this, and they've probably been struggling for quite some time, and then eventually the plan kind of comes together. They find peace with themselves, and they're kind of happy to end their own life at that point. Some of the things that you might see with people when you're working with them around the warning signs, talking about dying or suicide, they're open to talk about it because that's what they're thinking. That's the reality of it. They might have this negative view of themselves. They might be giving away possessions, kind of getting their things in order before they die, engaging in risky behaviors, more for elder people, not so much for youngsters, because youngsters do that anyway. They do engage in risky behaviors just because they haven't learned that if you do that, it might hurt when you fall off your bike riding it like that, or whatever it might be. People that are committing or have had a history of self-harm, you know, where they might be cutting wrists and things like that, that is a really big indicator. And you might see that on people when you're talking to them. People who become isolated or they become withdrawal, this sense of hopelessness, researching ways to harm themselves. And unfortunately, if you know where to go to on the internet, you can actually buy off the internet suicide kits, which will give you everything you need to be able to take your own life. It's really very sad that that is available. And again, it's children or youngsters, younger people that do that, because no disrespect beside one of you, but, you know, they are more capable of finding this sort of thing on the internet than what perhaps we are, because they've grown up with computers, so they are much more agile with a computer than we perhaps are when we get to my age. Substance misuse, alcohol, drugs, things like that. And then, as I said, you know, finding the means to do it, how are they going to do it, something sharp, 5 ounce tablets, whatever it might be. Feeling trapped or like there's no way out, nobody to turn to, no support around. Mood changes. 1 minute they're great, then the next minute they're very low. They're ace while they're really high, then when they come low, it can be a problem. Getting affairs in order. Some people will make a will at this point, particularly if they've got something to leave. And I might, if I have time, cover that right at the very end with a job that I dealt with. Lots of interesting things, unexpected visits, saying goodbye to people, and this feeling of pain, guilt, shame, and burden that they carry about with them. So they're all warning signs of what people might be talking about when you're engaging with them. There are some risk factors: drugs and alcohol, relationship issues, people who are unemployed, because obviously that impacts on their lifestyle. Significant life events. We get lots of people who find themselves in crisis once a year, where it might be the anniversary of a loved one's death and such like that, and it becomes a real difficult day for them, and they might consider ending their life at that point, or going to be with the person that they lost, and just pressures. History of trauma or abuse and poverty. Again, it's not a great place to be in if you've got that sort of constant in your life. If you're in a violent relationship, is another risk factor. Previous suicide attempts, if they've done it once, then it might be that they will try and do it again. People that are socially isolated, you might see a fair bit of this on the waterways, where you've got people living in boats on their own, and it might be because they've already lost their houses and the boat might be a cheaper financial option for them, and then it's still not great because then they're on their own with no family around them. Untreated, and I will say treated depression now as well, because the health service are under the cosh, as we all know, so sometimes even treated depression can be a problem for people. Family history of suicide. Survival guilt, we're seeing quite a lot of that at the minute with ex-service personnel who are coming back from these theatres of operation, where they may have lost their mates and things like that, and it's kind of, why them and not me? Why didn't I die with them? People coming out of prison who suddenly find themselves, you know, living rough because they haven't got that regimented, your breakfast, dinner and teas here and somewhere to sleep, and they find themselves back on the streets, and that sort of social conditions that come with that too. I'm not going to go through that because we kind of covered it. So a little bit of a quiz here for you. Let's have a little think about this. So someone with suicidal feelings would definitely take action to end their own life. What do we think? True or false? Yeah, Chris, false, absolutely. False. Yeah, just because somebody is talking about their suicide feelings doesn't mean they'll do it, particularly if somebody's prepared to listen to them at that time. We can stop it from happening. If someone tells you they're suicidal, they won't act on their feelings.
False again.
Yeah, false again. Just because I told you, it doesn't mean so they won't do it. If we don't get that support for them at the time, and we don't come across as being that person that can help them with their problems, then they still might do it. Suicide is selfish. This one, normally we get a bit of a sitting on the fence for this one. Is it selfish or not? What do we think?
False.
Yeah, I think it's false. I don't think anything selfish about taking your own life, because most people who I've dealt with who have been in this position where they consider taking their life, they're doing it because they think they're a burden on people. So they're trying to do away with that pressure. So I think it's quite a brave thing to do. But I can understand why people will say selfish, because they leave all the problems behind when they do eventually die. But I think it's false. It's painless.
Well, that's false. It can be very painful, can't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Depends how you do it. Yeah, so it's definitely painless, or definitely not painless. And then the last one, it's an easy way out.
No, that's false.
Definitely. Yeah, I don't think there's anything easy. No, definitely nothing easy about taking your own life. You've got to be in a really, really difficult place to really be even thinking about doing this, because life can bring so much joy. But I can understand when people are in a position where they're not getting any joy, and life is, it's becoming a burden, why they might start to feel that way. So some research done that says that each person who dies through suicide, there's a ripple effect, and that ripple effect will hit 135 people. And this was research done by the International Association for Suicide Prevention. So one death through suicide will impact on 135 people on average. And they're people that are witnesses. They might have seen them do it, or certainly found the deceased afterwards, immediate loved ones, wider family and friends, people that they might know from school, college, workplaces or leisure groups, people that live in the same vicinity as them, same street, community, wherever it is. And then obviously the emergency services personnel who have to come and deal with the aftermath of this. So it's a lot of people that can be impacted by one death. So, if we can save one death between us, then we save a load of grief and suffering for 135 other people. It's the figures are, like I say, it's proper research. It's not Dave Peach research. It's there, and that really surprised me when I learned that on some conference that I was at. So what we deal with then, from our point of view, and you might see all of these within the Waterways. So obviously we deal with suicide intervention, people not feeling great. Sieges, we get sieges on barges. We've had a few over the last few years. One in Castleford that went on for a few days, with somebody not wanting to come off who was experiencing some bad times. Barricades are very similar. In fact, this job that Stephen spoke about was a barricade. He didn't want to come off initially. Didn't want any engagement with anybody, just wanted to be left alone. And high-risk missing people, we get high-risk missing people who will hire a boat, take themselves off because it's so difficult to find them when they're just mooring up every now and again, and they leave all sorts of problems for people behind who are concerned about them. And terrorism incidents, you're not going to get that on the Waterways, I wouldn't think, not on the Calder, or Hebble Canal. We might get it in Hull at the docks and things like that, but there is obviously a risk of terrorism within the Waterways, but normally with cruise ships and things like that, not what you're going to see within the canals and rivers that we have around West Yorkshire, or I wouldn't suspect you'll ever see that. Response times then, for a push. If you contact the police, what are our response times? So you make a call to the police and it will be graded. And if it's an immediate call, it's going to be a 15 minutes response. So we will pride ourselves on, from getting a call to speaking to the individual who is needing the police, 15 minutes. And we're pretty good at doing that. We normally do get there in that 15 minutes. A priority call will be within 60 minutes. And all these are risk assessed by our control room staff and sergeants and supervisors in there. A standard call will be dealt with within 48 hours. So if you're just reporting, that something's been lost, or you found something, you want the police to come and pick it up, it might be 48 hours before we get there, because we're actually inundated with all the 15-minute jobs and the 60-minute jobs which come above it. So, you know, we have a little bit longer to get to the stuff that is like non-priority. And then the last one is an appointment. So that is done by mutual agreement. So people might phone the police wanting to report something. Actually, I know I need to see a police officer, but I've not got time to do it now. Can I see somebody next Tuesday and work around it then? And yes, absolutely, we can do that. We will do it by an appointment process, because that suits us and it suits the person that's reporting it, so it works for both. Anybody who is in crisis, where life might be at risk, will get this emergency call, 15 minutes response. So like Stephen said, he phoned the police, the operator there graded this as an emergency or an immediate, and we had officers there fairly quickly. So that's what you'll get. So don't be afraid to phone the police. I know one of the things that Chris asked was, when do we phone the police? How do we know when to do it? Well, we can't take that out of your hands, because you phone the police, and then when we take the details from you, we have a risk assessment process that we will go through to decide what that risk is and where does that fit in with our response times, you know, from calls from the public. But anything where there's life at risk, or you know, somebody might be looking to end their own life, it will be that 15 minutes response, because we have that duty to protect life. So that is what you need to do there. If you do speak to these people, it's just a conversation. Just take your time with them. So I'm not going to give you any tips how we do it, because there is a bit of an art form to it. It's not magic. But you know, I've got like 15 minutes left, and I can't turn you into negotiating in 15 minutes. It's taken me 25 years to master it. And I'm still learning now. So we're not going to do it in a half an hour session, but there are some kind of golden rules. So some of these, our own values and beliefs might get in the way. So if somebody is doing something that we're not happy about or we don't agree with, that will impact on how we manage them. And just because somebody is, you know, really struggling with life and thinking of ending their life, that might go against everything that we believe in, but it's their life, it's their values and beliefs. So we need to try and understand it. And when I train negotiation skills to people, I will say to them, place yourself in their shoes. And would life look very differently if you were living in their circumstances? And it probably would. So just try and manage your own values and beliefs. Don't exert them onto other people, because they're all very different. And when we're challenged, our emotional brain takes over. We don't like to be told that we're wrong. And if we are told that we're wrong, we normally come out fighting and try and prove that we were right the first time round. Can't do that with these people, because we don't want to get into an argument with them about what is right and wrong at this time. We just need to save their lives. So it's not, you know, it's not a challenge. We have to manage our own emotions and brains when we're dealing with them. And we can be very quick to make judgments about people. So try not to do that. You know, if you're dealing with somebody, you think to yourself, well, I don't even like them. It'll take a long time. They will pick up on that. It'll be a long time before they will warm to you. It's kind of 2 minutes is what it takes to make a judgment about somebody, but it could take months for them to turn that round. So we try not to make judgments about people, because it can be counterproductive. And we listen to reply, not to understand. And this is the really big one for me. Listening to people in crisis is what's going to save their lives. It's not about the responses that you give. It's about listening to what they're going through and then showing some empathy with them, and being able to then try and work things through with them. But you've got to listen to them. If you don't listen really, really carefully, you are going to miss what I would refer to as a hook. So they might tell you that their life is awful at the moment, but they might mention that they've got a child or a son or a daughter or whatever it might be. Well, for me, that would be a hook. If I've got somebody who's now wanting to take their own life, but yet they've told me they've got a son or a daughter, that person must mean something to them. And that's what I would work on with them. When you tell me you've got a son or a daughter, tell me more about your son. You know, and then when we've got that bit of rapport with them around that, then I might start using that to say, well, you know, what will your son think of this? Surely, you know, you need to see your son. They might be able to help, whatever it might be, but you've really got to listen to them to pick up on those little things that they might say, which are going to be the key to it all. And then some considerations, really. Never place yourself in harm. If they decide to end their life, that is their decision. It won't be what we want, because we're all invested in keeping these people well and healthy. But don't let them take you with them. So I do a lot of work at heights, on top of car parks, rooftops and things like that. And I try not to get too close to them, because I'm absolutely mindful that if they are going to go over the edge and they grab me, now I'm quite a big lad, but if they're bigger than me and they've got a little bit of momentum around them, they've grabbed hold of me, I could end up going with them. And I kind of like to promise my wife that when I go to work, I'll come home from work safely. So don't put yourselves in a position where you could be at danger. Take the threat seriously all the time. Ask them to remove any immediate danger. If they're on the wrong side of the railings or whatever it might be, come back over there, put the petrol down, let's have a chat about this. If they're taking drugs or alcohol, get them to stop. It's just going to delay things. Talk slowly, clearly, use simple words. These people might not be at the same educational standards as you guys. They might even be, English might be their second or third language, because of the diverse communities that we live with within West Yorkshire, so that they might not understand it. Keep it simple. Listen to them carefully, which I've already covered. If it's unclear to you whether the person is suicidal or not, ask them. That might be what you think is counterproductive, but no, ask them, because that's what's going to keep them alive. Because then we can talk about why they feel that way. What is it today that's made you feel that way? There's lots of research being conducted to say that if you are prepared to talk about death and your feelings around suicide, they are less likely to die through suicide. So engage with them with it. Put the elephant in the room is what I would say. Let's have that discussion. And don't be afraid to use the words suicide or death, because that's ultimately what's going to happen. Talk openly about the finality of death. It's only one option. There's loads of other things that we can do here to help you. And there's lots of agencies out there that have got, all sorts of things that they can do to support you. If they admit they're feeling suicide, let's get them to talk about it. It's not going to do any harm. In fact, it's going to do a world of good. Focus on those causes. We've kind of covered that. If they're getting angry with you, let them get angry. Whenever they're angry, they're still alive and they're still giving you information. Find the problem, the hook, the reason to live. Explore what is meaningful to them, what keeps them going on a day-to-day basis. Okay, offer reassurance, but not false reassurance. We want them to feel better about themselves. Personal concern and empathy. Well, people ask me about this one. Can you really do that with somebody that you don't know? Well, absolutely we can, because we all want these people to be well, so we can do that. We don't want them to die on our watch. So empathy is it's just about the way that you're going to speak with these people and engage with them. There will be ups and downs whilst you're talking. Just build through them. And do not go along with final wills. This is a really big one. If they say things to you like, well, I'm going to die, but will you tell my parents or my loved one that I'm sorry and I've done it for them? Well, then definitely no, because you're then taking responsibility for something that they should be doing. So definitely do not take a verbal will from somebody. It's their will to give. No white lies. Do not promise them something that we can't deliver, because if we tell them a lie, then it's going to break any trust or rapport that we've got with them when they find out. And if we have to deal with them again, which we do sometimes, then they'll never forgive us for the first time that we lied to them. So no white lies. The rules of conversation: 70%, 30%. They talk, you talk. You should be listening more than you're talking. And don't overspeak them or interrupt them, because that's where you might miss the key, that's going to unlock the cabinet, if you like, and save them. So some communication rules, responsibility. And I get I'm rushing through this. It's your responsibility to make sure that conversation goes well. It's as simple as that. You're there in the moment with them. Make sure it goes well. We've covered values and beliefs, but everybody lives in different unique model of the world, but try not to We'll set them around their values, but don't tell them they're wrong for definite, because they're not wrong in their mind. It's how they have been developed from being a young person to where they are now. Attitude, if your mind's in the wrong place and your conversation will be in the wrong place, trust me, you've got to be in the right place to do this. Listening is a gift. That's what will save it. This is about picking up on those little things that they say. You've got to be in that position to be able to listen to them. And sincerity, they will know if you're not being sincere. It comes across in the way that you talk, it comes across in the way that you present yourself. So be sincere with them. And you will be, because you're all chaplains, so you will all want the right outcomes for these people, and that will show in the way that you engage with them. And what I would say is that sometimes the way they present is only the tip of the iceberg. So this is what you see. So you might see somebody who's angry, who's doing lots of shouting and making all sorts of threats to do whatever they're going to do, whether it be to harm themselves or harm other people. That's all visible. Yeah, that's there right in front of us. It's what's below the water, the bottom end of the iceberg that we need to get to, and it's like, if they're angry, is it because, just some things that I'll throw out there, is it because they're lonely? Is it because they've got a loss in their own life? It could be anything, and it's for us to unpick it, because that's below will explain why they're presenting like they are. And once we understand these attitudes, beliefs, expectations, values, assumptions, like it says there, then we will really start to get on with these people, and they will warm to us, and we will get there with them. So that's really important. And you need to come across about having some warmth and some competence. You need to be good at what you do. They'll be expecting you. You come along to help them. They expect you to be good at what you do, and they want you to have lots of empathy about them, lots of warmth. So, just by example, my mum, who's in her 80s now, and if I had a brand new car, would I allow her to drive it? No, I wouldn't, because she's got no competence. She's 80, and she wasn't a great driver when she was only 50, but now she's 80. It's stop her from driving full stop. But does she love me? Yeah. So she would be kind of 10 on the warmth, but low in competence. When I work with the armed police and the military, they're kind of fairly low on the warmth, but good on the competency, because they're really good at what they do. But they haven't got time for all this warmth and negotiation, that they're quite direct in what they need to do. But we need to be up here, warmth and competent, to be able to engage with people. So we need to be in that top right quarter. Okay, there are some social rules. Trust, don't break it, don't lie to them, you'll never get it back. You can take the moral high ground, and this is really good. If they're being rude or they're threatening to hurt you, tell them, why are you being rude? What have I done to hurt you? Don't make these threats to me. It's not nice. You can do that with them, because ordinarily people who want to kind of take their own life, they don't really want to hurt other people in the process. It's about them ending their lives, not taking somebody else with them. So they're normal. They wouldn't want to hurt you as somebody being there that were helping them. They're more likely to tell you to go away or turn around so they can do what they want to do. Always acknowledge before you give your opinion. I can see how that might appear, but have you thought of this? Don't rubbish their ideas, because that might be the way forward and what they're thinking. And get them to promise. If they promise you that they're not going to hurt themselves or do anything that you might deem to be silly, then they will probably do it, because trust and the power of a promise is huge. It's just how we are wired up. I use this all the time. People will say to me, well, if I'm going to come down, can I have a cigarette? Yeah, if you come down, I'll give you a cigarette. And I always give them one. Promise me you'll come down if I give you a cigarette. Cigarette's done. Next minute, they're down, most of the time. And then finally, hostility attracts hostility. If you're angry with them, that's what you're going to get back. Submission attracts dominance. If you're a bit too soft, then they'll take charge and they'll be telling you what to do. But if you can be warm, then show this warmth, this empathy, then you are likely to get that back. And then that's where the work will get done with this. And the power of sorry. If you get something wrong, just say you're sorry. Yeah, we've made a mistake. Move on. And embarrassment. Don't embarrassment. You might win the event, but they'll never forgive you for it. And again, if you ever deal with the same person again, that they're going to struggle to engage with you, because in their mind, you've made them look foolish previously. A note about language, because we are coming to the end now. People don't commit suicide. There's no such an offence as commit suicide, and it sticks with the family. So we will say that people have died through suicide, or they've taken their own life. It's just a little bit of stigma that sits with the family, thinking that their loved one has died whilst committing an offence, and they haven't. It's kind of it's old hat now. We don't use those terms of committed suicide. It's not great. So that's it. Suicide does not end the chances of life getting worse, but it will eliminate the possibility of it ever getting better. So I did mention during that, I'll come back to one thing about oh, now then, what was it? That's I'll come back to. I can't remember. I should have written it down, but I didn't. But I can. The actual incident will explain it to you. We had a chap who was reported as missing from home, and the police went. He lived in a really nice house up in the top side of Wetherby, indoor swimming pool, 2 Aston Martins on the drive, 2 daughters who were 15 and 17 at the time. They were both at the grammar school at Leeds, private education. So they were a really nice family with lots of positives in their life. They owned a printing company, but the printing company had fallen on hard times, and Dad had made the decision, having contacted insurance companies, that if he died today, the insurance companies would pay out, which would mean that his wife could continue to keep the house in Wetherby, they could continue to keep the girls at the grammar school at Leeds, and they could live this really nice life. And he planned to do that. So when we found him, he was on a fire escape on a 3rd floor with a rope around his neck, and the other end was tied to the fire escape. The rope wasn't very long. He wasn't going to reach the floor. He would have swung and probably broken his neck as he went over the fire escape. So a really, really tricky situation. A very clever individual. Like I say, he ran a really successful business, but this had fallen on hard times. And we spent ages talking to him, and we tried everything to get him to come back over, and he wasn't really having any of it. And everything we put to him, he had an answer for, because he'd spent weeks and weeks and weeks planning this. There'd been, a degree of really good planning, meticulous, you might say. And we spoke to him about his girls, how much he loved them, and he had answers for everything. Yeah, but they'll understand that Dad's died today, so they can continue to go there. They're going to go to university. It'll pay for all the university fees. I'm setting them up for life if I die today. And it was really difficult to argue with, because everything he was saying, and I was thinking about it, well, you know what, I might be prepared to do that for my kids if ever I was in that position, if it meant that their life was so much easier. But the one thing that he hadn't thought of, and it was kind of a light bulb moment, was when I said to him, "You're telling me how much you love your girls, but you're prepared to leave them before you do the one thing that you must do for them that nobody else can do." And he looked at me and he said, "There isn't anything. I've planned everything. I've been at this for weeks, and I know there's this much money coming from that insurance company. For the insurance money, you're going to walk him down aisle. That's Dad's job, and nobody else can do it." Anyways, as a result of that, he did come back over, and everything was fine. He got the help that he needed, and his printing company continued. But I suppose the moral of that is that not everybody you deal with is going to be in crisis. Some people might have planned it for the greater good, but we've still got to deal with them and try and resolve it for them. So quite a sad story, but it ended well for the family. Any questions? Chris, I think I'm just about there. It's about 10 to, so I'm spot on. Any questions from anybody?
Dave, can you stop screen sharing so we can see you as well, and we can see each other? But yeah, thank you so much for that half hour. I wrote down loads of useful sort of things, and we have recorded this so we can go back into it. But if you just knock off your stop screen sharing, that's us.
Yeah, I'm back there. That's me now. Yeah, that's a
Okay.
good
So if
sign.
you click on that red X next to the leave button, then we'll really
Yeah.
see you. That's the one. Yeah. Great. So no, other people. What resonated? We've only got 10 minutes, so what have you thought about, maybe as if for the first time? What are you taking away? Or if there are questions as well, ask Dave now.
I loved what you said, Dave, about listening out for the hook, to give a lead on encouragement, to get them talking about something that would generally bring them joy. I'm seeing a guy at the moment, and he's in an awful lot of pain from a back injury, and he's at his wit's end. I was with him today for an hour, but he loves cycling, and that's he just wants to be able to get on his bike. He's about 54, and he was in tears for a lot of the time. And I had to go. I had another appointment, but I've seen him on more occasions, and I may go back and see him tomorrow. But as soon as I started talking about cycling with him, which I had done the previous visit, I got a smile, and he immediately wanted to share more. And that was today. I hadn't appreciated it, but it was lovely to see that he, for a moment, it distracted him from his pain, and he was able to talk about it with a smile on his face.
Yeah, and to further that, if you do meet up with this chap again, I would talk about cycling, but I would also talk about what is the rehabilitation that he's got to go through before he can get back on his bike. And we would call it a double-handed compliment, I suppose, really. We talk about something, so it might be what is the treatment, and that might be really difficult for him, because it might be a real battle that he's got to go. So on one hand, you've got to have the treatment to help you, but on the other hand, that will get you back on your bike. And from what I'm seeing here is you love cycling. So always give the positive one the second time. So you cleared the issue around the treatment, and then give this gets you back on your bike, so that you leave them with the positive, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Anything else?
We had a boater some years ago who had lost all his money through a scam. He was a businessman.
Yeah.
And we came across him, and we were talking to him, and right just before we were going to leave, he told us that he was thinking of taking his own life. And he'd got it all set up. He'd got his Jenny just outside. He was going to bring it into the boat and kill himself with carbon monoxide poisoning.
Yeah.
And we talking to him, I can't remember what we said, but
we promised to go back the following day, didn't we?
Yes.
Which we did.
But while we were there, the police were trying to find him. They obviously knew about that he was trying to take his own life, but he refused to. He kept getting telephone calls, and he wouldn't answer it. He knew it was them, and he was angry with them. He didn't want the police to come. And we didn't know what. But we left him, we thought, in a quiet mood.
Yeah, with some positive ideas.
Yeah. I mean, that somebody would have been in touch with the police to report him missing, or whatever the circumstances were. Straight away, somebody does care about him because they've made that call.
Pardon?
Somebody cares about him because they've made the call to the police, so somebody must have triggered that.
Yes.
Yeah, indeed.
But should we have called the police?
I would have done in those circumstances, yeah, because you're with him. The police are trying to get hold of him, so they obviously don't know where he is. They've got a phone number for him, which is probably why they're ringing. So yeah, if you're thinking to yourself, well, life is at risk here because he's telling you that he's going to end his life through carbon monoxide poisoning, then yes, I think that is one where you should phone the police.
Didn't want to, because he would have been very angry. And actually, the next day he
calmed down.
He'd given up the idea of taking his own life.
The last week was
yes,
he
yeah.
sold his boat, moved back with the family into Birmingham somewhere, where he sent us a photo of him looking very happy with his dog.
Yes, so, and that was a year later. He got in touch with us and thanked us.
Yeah, so that's great if people do that. But how would you have felt had you gone back the following day and he'd done what he said he was going to do, and you've walked away from it? And I'm sorry about that's the reality of things. You know, he's told you I'm going to do this, that, and the other. The police are trying to get hold of him, and he's not answering the phone. And then, like I say, you went back the next day, and everything was great, because people can be up and down. 1 minute, you know, it's a bad day. Something happens which makes it more positive. But I still think I would have phoned the police. They wanted to speak to him for some reason. So I would have phoned the police on that one, definitely.
He trusted us not to.
It's I'm going to butt in. I'm really aware of the clock, and I'm also really aware Jerry's got his hand up. In this instance, he didn't die, and for that we're ever so thankful. And I guess for me, with Dave, this is a massive grey area, and you know, this was a couple of years ago or more. I hope that you spoke with your hub lead and said this is a serious thing that we're engaging with right away, rather than waiting till the next sort of monthly hub meeting. So at the start of this, Stephen told the story, and he phoned me within a day, or, you know, not during that incident, because he knew he wanted to phone the police. But this is why I think we're with teams and with hub leaders, and you've got my number, but this feels like a really important sort of bit of learning. But I am aware of the clock. And Chris and Diana, you know, we can talk about this tomorrow a bit more if you want. But Jerry's got his hand up. So to you, Jerry, if that's possible.
It was really just a question. Tony Locke and I were dealing with a gentleman who's a bit of an alcoholic, a gambler, ill, he's now actually been made redundant but got paid off. So that's quite good. But when he was threatening to kill himself and we were trying to get help, most avenues we turned to really kept referring to he has competence for mental health, and it was, well, there's nothing else we can really do, and and it was really difficult. It's like, well, nobody wants to bloody help here because he's got competence.
Yeah, so the Mental Health Act, which is what people will obviously fall under for this type of thing, does talk about capacity. But capacity can be you know, it can be there 1 minute and gone the next. And the amount of people that I've dealt with over the years where we've had them on a, you know, in a vulnerable position whereby they're talking about ending their life, and we get them down, and then they go to hospital to be assessed, and then, you know, an hour later they're back out again, and they're doing it again. So sometimes they have to be pushed a little bit. But the thing with the police is, you know, we're not mental health workers, but if you've got someone who's like that, we are quite good at being able to provide pathways into other care. So, you know, we can provide pathways into the GPs, we can provide pathwork into the well, there's loads of things that we can do, whether that be through the Samaritans or whatever. But there's loads of other different support agencies that we can direct people to for that help if need be. And if they're not going to take it, and they really are in a position where capacity is being asked of them, and whether we think they've got it or not, then they can be arrested and they can be taken to a mental health hospital where they can be assessed then, and then that process follows where they might get detained for their own, you know, for their own benefits.
Okay, cheers.
Thank you. I'm really aware that we're up against the clock here, but this idea of if folk have capacity, they have rights. But I think we're back to the, you know, prevention of loss of life and our duty of care. And we are signposts, and our duty of care, we are being told by the police chief negotiator, phone the police. And that feels like a fairly key bit of, we're discharging our duty by doing what the police are asking us to do, rather than being anxious about cheesing people off. But I know it's a real hard hard one thought. Malcolm and Steph, we are over at 8 o'clock. So I am going to draw stumps because I've said we'd end at 8 o'clock. But write me an email and I will then forward it to Dave, and we'll have, you know, maybe a bit of to and fro with the emails. But I suspect we could go on to 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. We've got about 5 or 6 more of these webinars this year planned, and I want us to get into good habits of finishing when we said we'd finish. So, Dave, round of applause, jazz hands. Thank you ever so much. And
Thank you.
I saw your dave.peach2 at West Yorkshire Police or whatever it was. I've got Dave's email. So if you do want a longer conversation, are you up for that, Dave? I hope so. But
yeah. I mean, you got my details, Chris. If you know, if you want to drop me an email, and then I'll sort out whatever we need to sort out.
Thank you ever so much. So thank you ever so much, everybody. And I will see you at the next one of these, whenever that is, sometime next month, I guess. God bless. Thanks ever so much, Stephen.
Cheers. Thank you. Bye.
Cheers. Go well. Bye. Bye.
Bye.